Hello, welcome to episode 10 of Defense Against the Dark Arts. I'm Paul Miil, and today we're going to be talking about inoculation, thought stopping, physical abuse, and radicalization. So in a more extreme case of brainwashing or manipulation, an abuser will resort to physical techniques if they can. And so we're going to keep this general. We're not going to go into too many details because, you know, the options are infinite of what they could be doing. But we'll just keep, you know, a great or a grand overview. So typically what they could do is sleep deprivation, you know, not letting you sleep, not letting you sit or lay down, keeping you cold, thirsty, hungry, physical harm through various forms of, you know, violent assault. It could be loud noise, constant flickering of lights, unstable temperatures, you know, maybe keeping the humidity high so that you feel the hot more or you feel the cold more. Constant wetness, you know, damp clothes. You know, if your clothes are wet, you're going to feel the cold more, right? And maybe not letting you touch anything soft, you know, concrete or steel. Maybe injecting you with some substances to make you feel nauseous and give you a migraine or headaches. You know, but I'm sure if you know, if you're in a Chinese you know, prison somewhere or in Guantanamo Bay, you know, you don't need me telling you these are the things they're going to be doing to you or might be doing to you, right? You'll know. So other techniques that might be used by, you know, for physical abuse or physical tactics, I guess, of manipulation would be hypnotic effects. Now, apparently there's something, I don't know, this is what the experts say, right? So a repetitive beat between, you know, like 40 and, you know, like 80 beats per minute, you know, which is around the heart or the beat of a heart. And this rhythm can alter your consciousness until you have reached what they call an alpha state. And in this situation, you're apparently 25 times more susceptible to suggestion than you would be in the beta state, you know, so the experts say. So again, we don't need to go into this too much. I mean, if somebody's physically abusing you, you're probably going to know. So the purpose of physical abuse or physical manipulation or abuse for manipulation is to weaken your defenses, to weaken your resolve, to make you more pliable to the wishes of the manipulator. And this can work on many scales, you know. This could be on an individual scale. You know, it could be on a global scale. This could be, you know, keeping an entire population malnourished, you know, or you know, weak. If you have an entire population weak or tired, you know, that might weaken their resolve, right? They might be more susceptible to do what the tyrant wants them to. But this is a slippery slope, as history has shown us, because many a revolt and revolution have risen due to people being hungry, you know, tired and starved, right? So there's limits, obviously, to how far a manipulator can push this before the people will push back. So for all the money in the world, ideological crazies still need useful idiots. And that's where people like you and me come in, where they're useful idiots if we're not, you know, paying attention. It's easy. It's so easy to be manipulated to become somebody's useful idiot. You know, generally, you know, the common technique would be to divide the population or a group, depending on what it is, into two different factions, two different groups. You can divide them any way you want: gender, skin shade, you know, history, hair color, whatever you want. They can divide groups into two different groups, divide the people into two different groups or many groups. More groups, the better, right? And then pit those groups against each other. And then they'll be fighting each other instead of watching what the wizard is doing behind the curtain by, taking advantage of everybody. So there's on a scale, there's a manipulator at the center, at the core, and then radiating out from the manipulator, there would be the radical core. So generally, the radical core doesn't believe the same as what the manipulator believes, because the manipulator knows they're manipulating the people for, the manipulator's best interests, and the radical core are the ultimate useful idiot. And then it's a gradient that gets weaker and weaker away from the core to less radical useful idiots, and to just maybe supporters and people who think, oh, okay, that's good, dummies who believe, or naive idiots who believe what they're being told. So and you can see that in religions, you can see that in cults, you see that in ideologies, you see that in a lot of these organizations all over the place, where the central core knows what they're doing, and then the ones closest to them are their lapdogs who are conditioned to do what they're told, and they'll never get into the actual core. So there's the core, and then the radicals think they're in the core, but there's actually another core that is probably ideologically inverted from what they actually believe. But so in order for any ideologies or religions to exist, you need the radicals. The followers are, of course, forbidden from questioning anything, from questioning if their ideology is bullshit or not. And if you're ever in a group or an organization and you're hissed at for questioning, are what we doing is right? Is this right? Why are we doing that? If anybody hisses at you for ever asking questions like that, you're in a cult. You're in an ideological, bunch of crazies. So walk away. Get up and walk away, man. Radicalization. What's the definition of radicalization? Let's see here. Radicalization is departing markedly from the usual or customary, extreme, drastic, advocating fundamental changes in current practices. Radical ideas are not necessarily bad. Dissenting radical ideas should be encouraged, and to challenge the veil of any ideology and all ideologies. The radical ideas that are challenging the ideology also should be able to hold their own water and should be challenged as well, from other attacks, right? So this is how, logical attacks are not a bad thing. Logical attacks are a good thing. We need to check to see if something's logical or not. And if it doesn't hold up against logic, generally it's wrong. But that being said, if you start looking at quantum physics, that stuff does not hold up against logic. So, your mileage may vary. But generally speaking, when it comes to, people and stuff like that, but in the normal world, the non-quantum world, we should be challenging, logic, we should be challenging everything against logic, and even logic we should be challenging. So we normally think of a radical as someone who's been brainwashed to the point that they are, an ideological extremist. They may be willing to perform violence, for their ideology, regardless of the consequences. And the basis of the radicalization, is outrage, and outrage is an emotion. So of course it's emotionally based. So again, watch out when people try to get your emotions pumped up, because they're trying to manipulate you. Now there's different types of radicals, but there's self-made, lone wolf radicals that feed the monster, and then there's the ones that have been groomed for the cult, the group, the university or whatever, right? So these people have generally been conditioned against, maybe not the lone wolf, but the ones who have been conditioned and groomed into a group have been conditioned against rational criticism, and that's they've been inoculated against rational criticism. This is obviously done first to convert them, And the inoculation, of course, is meant to keep them for retention. Because if they are inoculated against people asking, rational questions against their ideology, and they can defend against it, then even like in their own mind, then when people are confronting them with, rational discourse, and they're not, it's not going in, then you've got them. The manipulator has them. They have retention. This radical will be a member of their cult or their ideology for, many a moon. Yeah. So a radical may be, made from scratch, which is, probably not too likely. I think generally it'd be someone who has strong beliefs. They'll fish. The manipulator will fish for people who, have these beliefs, in the wild. And then when they sort of gather them around, they can nudge them to the direction and mold them closer to the direction they want to go. Again, there could be some crazies out there or lone wolves who feed the monsters. When I talk about feeding the monster, it's when you allow yourself to start thinking, oh, they're doing that. Oh, look at them. Oh, look at that. And you're having these internal monologues or internal debates or feeding, oh, they're just doing that. You're feeding the monster. You're perpetuating a distorted perception of reality by not, looking at, facts and data, by feeding internal anger or internal ideas towards, crazy, towards a person or something. That's feeding the monster. You don't want to give them. The monster wants food. They want your attention. They want you to keep feeding it, right? Oh, look at that person. Jealousy. All these types of things, right? Or whatever, anything. So don't allow yourself, when you find you're sitting there and you're starting to feed the monster, you're starting to be bitter about something, you're starting to think, oh, that person's really an asshole. And look what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. Or not even look what they're doing. You're just playing back in your mind. That's feeding the monster. And this is a slippery slope. And you shouldn't be feeding the monster. But there's a famous quote that came from. I can't remember what it is right now, but I'm sure a lot of you, all two of you who watch this video will know. Or maybe not. Maybe 50% of you will. I don't know. So the first step in making a radical, in grooming them, is to, or even the first step to making a radical is for them to experience a great injustice, a great transgression by some other group, or vicariously they see a transgression of somebody else by some other group. Right, so the transgression is the process of breaking somebody's internal laws, or their rules, their principles, right? And emotions must be activated. So the two most common transgressions are mistreatment and immoral acts. So mistreating somebody or doing something that the target thinks is immoral, which two different things. So a mistreatment could cause the target or their martyr, who the person, if it's a third party, if they're experiencing some kind of pain or distress, that's going to rile up the emotions of the target, right? Where the idea is to try to, right? So a mistreatment can be historical. It can go back generations, past wars, massacres, persecutions. It can be exaggerated, more likely completely fabricated, and grown in the telling, like a fish story. You caught a fish, then it gets bigger every time you tell the story. But we're all vulnerable to this type of attack. We got to watch out for it. So the immoral transgression is it's easy to get a rise from the target. The evil person that you're using to rile up the emotions of the target, could have done or said something that's unthinkable, to the values or the schema of the target, right? So it could be, blasphemy, if there's some kind of religion, like if they're a Muslim and they don't want you to draw cartoons of Muhammad. Ooh, that's unthinkable, right? Right. It's ridiculous. But so a simple lack of respect for their views is enough, for the target's social rules, So historically, religion, it was a common source, to drum up radicals. But today, you can attack somebody's idea, religion is just an idea, but it's the same thing. But today the attack is not even religions. You just attack their idea, their concept, and that can have the same effect. They can get all riled up and emotional, which is scary because, in a free society, all ideas should be open to scrutiny. Like they should be held up against, scrutiny. And, that includes, religious ideas from all religions, Christians, Judeo, Muslim, all of them. All of them. Why would one be above any of the other? Right? They're all just ideologies, made up fairy tales. The fact that students today in many Western universities can become radicalized by someone attacking their ideology indicates how poorly Western schools and universities have taught critical thinking. Of all places, the university is the place, supposedly where ideas are challenged, where, they're examined, they're weighed, but this is the cesspool from, whence bigoted, radicals of the woke, intersectionalists or, critical race theory or whatever, they're all spawned from, this disgusting, what used to be, or it was meant to be, the place of enlightenment. And now it's the place of indoctrination. And so these indoctrinated students, these from the universities today, they carry their bigotry and their to their new positions, as editors, in organizations of, in news organizations, or as CEOs of big tech. So the defense against radicalization is via mistreatment, is to activate your internal Spock, for you, not for, if you see something else. We've got to pretty much worry about ourselves here. So if you see somebody's trying to get you emotional about something, it could be in person, or it could be, video, it could be news, it could be anything. And if you feel that you're getting emotional about something, you got to activate your internal Spock, remove all emotion, when you feel your emotions rise up, right, against you, right? Realize that your emotion is the goal, and they're playing you. Almost any transgression we hear about in the news today is pretty much not a transgression at all. It's just framed that way, to get an emotional response from the audience. If you look into any of these things, you're like, well, okay, maybe it's nowhere near as bad as what the news said it was. Why would they say that? So a radical does not need an organization, right? States as in governments, not the United States, but just the states, it could be the state, They may seek to snuff out grassroots organizations, that have risen organically like a cancer due to, actual transgressions by the state or its allies in power, that are, so if these grassroots organizations aren't aligned with the state's ideology, they might be snuffed out by their thugs, right? So most outrages will come and go. People get upset over things, they get up, whatever, if there was an actual injustice. But if the transgressions are, ongoing with no retaliation and there's no justice, if the people who are doing these things are being caught, and released, and the district attorneys aren't, punish them in any way in, certain cities, then pressure will grow, within the target audience who's watching the targets, so if the justice, the idea here, so if the justice is outside of the legal system, they want the targets to seek extra judiciary justice. I think this is speculation, but I think the idea with all what's going on with this whole, because states, Oregon, a lot of district attorneys, I think Philadelphia and in Portland, they would arrest people many times, and who did all kinds of lit fires, rioted, brutal things, and they would not be charged by the district attorney. They'd be let out. You think, well, why are they doing that? Did they want to see the thing burn? No. What their goal was to do was to upset the public, to upset whoever they consider the opposite, the right. Back when it was Trump and the Trump supporters. So the point, they're just dying. They were dying because the news was calling the mostly peaceful protests, and they're standing in front of a massive, strip plaza burning, and people having their, being mauled in restaurants, old, innocent people just sitting there trying to have a drink, and then people come and drinking their drinks and, all this craziness. So they were trying to incite the I guess what you call it, if you're going to try to dumb it down into right and left, it's not right and left, but if you consider the organizations there who were behind this, Antifa and stuff, were trying to incite people to rebel. So all they needed was one rebellion, even though they had riots week after week after week for years, for the past year anyways, and they so desperately wanted to have one so that they could frame it and say, look, there was an insurrection against the United States, the Capitol. Now we're getting, now because of them doing it, not because of the riots that have been happening for the past year, but now since somebody rose up against the Capitol, now we're going to enact all kinds of really tight security measures. Even though those idiots were calling for defund the police, right? Now they aren't going to defund the police. Trust me. They're going to be hiring more thugs, and they're thinning out their police. What they're doing is they're thinning out the police who have any morals and who won't, who are, the good guys, and the guys that are left are all the scumbags who don't care. They'll just beat up. They'll say, go beat up that guy. So they'll go beat him up, for no reason, right? Because the power tripping, small-minded pieces of shit. These are the ones they sort of want to have back. So I think this was a long-term ploy, as Time Magazine said. This was a coordinated effort for the past year to remove Trump, to defend democracy. They're going to change laws and do all these things to defend democracy, right? So they're justifying it. So they called it a cabal in Time Magazine, you can see. So I'm not coming up with this conspiracy theory stuff. I'm telling you what was written by the people who are bragging about it in Time Magazine. So, I mean, it's insane how they try to get people pressure to build up, react, so that they can use that as a vehicle to clamp down and have more tight state, 1984 Orwellian control of the population. I don't know why. Maybe they're planning on some really big things. Why do they need tighter control of the population? I don't get it. But there must be something coming down the road. I don't know. Why would they want more? Maybe it's just all about power. I don't know. But getting back to our radical organizations, they could be spawned. So a new radical organization could be spawned, by a vocal leader or by a grassroots group, who found each other, or by various cells of, like-minded people, in the wild. Or the group may not be an organic grassroots organization at all. It may be a fabricated AstroTurf organization that was created by, warped billionaires, government agencies, or anyone who has the resources. So we may not know who are the people are behind pushing the pulling the strings, pumping the money, putting the billions or hundreds of millions or probably billions into these, movements. It could be all kinds of types of conflicting groups. But anyways, that's sort of how these things happen. And so the group, once it's formed, may write their mission statement. They may promote their message and recruit more people. And there's actually the police. This is not speculation. The police and governments have set up fake organizations to try to draw historically dissidents. They want to remove using honey traps. Puppet organizations. They might come up with a group that they ideologically don't like, and so they'll create a fake ideological group, and then see who joins, and they get their name, and it's like or online. More likely there'll be a lot of this online today, right? So it costs less money. Yeah, so there's been times where, it's indistinguishable. You don't know who between say a police organization or a government agency and organized crime, and they do stuff, and you're like, well, what's going on here, right? So there seem to be people who care about right and wrong, and then there's organizations that seem to, slide their priorities towards control. Who has control, right? It may be instinctive, but when we get into groups, we seem to want to dominate other groups. Generally speaking, I'm talking about humans, not me, or you, but some people. Maybe when we all do it, maybe I would too. I don't know. I've been in groups and I don't want to dominate other groups, but I've seen little empire building groups before, and It's like, what the hell are they doing? So this is obviously not the case for everybody, but I think a lot of people who run for government, police, management positions, they seem to be more susceptible to empire building and wanting to have control. We must have control. We can't have other people or people being in control of themselves. Well, why not? Like, this is a crazy thing to not allow people the sovereignty of being in control of themselves. Who are you or who am I? So this always leads to tyranny. So who are the targets? Who are good targets for radicalization? Well, people who feel a sense of injustice, who've been marginalized, or are poor, they're good targets, right? Or maybe they're spoiled rich kids, that the parents have ignored, right? So like-minded peaceful groups might be a source for targets, that might be nudged to become more radical, So you might have a manipulator who joins a group to look for vulnerable people, maybe an AA or I don't know, some counseling, whatever grief thing or something. They're going to look for manipulative, or they're going to manipulate people who are, vulnerable, right? Communication to targets. I mean, this is on a larger scale now. Communication to targets will be through narratives in the news, op-eds, posters, social media, and in person. The volume and intensity of the narratives in the news, and the op-eds, the posters, the social media, and in person, they will be increased in volume and intensity until they get their desired effect, until they create enough tension. Tension will trigger action. So if they're not creating, they'll just increase, they'll start cranking it up. More intense stories, more egregious, whatever the narrative is, will get more and more intense until they trigger the action that they want. Yeah, so be wary of those who dwell on transgressions, mistreatments, injustices, and assertions, and they appear to be trying to create an emotional response. Like, that's the desired action. They want an emotional response out of you. And alarm bells should definitely be going when you hear the words get angry or get any emotion, right? Time is now. We want justice, The manipulators will also push for polarization. It's the same thing over and over again, but these are a lot of things we don't really notice if you're not paying attention, right? So the manipulator will try to dehumanize the other side, especially anyone who disagrees. They will scream if you dare attack their idea as if their idea is a person, but they'll have no qualms about calling for violence against you, your person, as if your person was an idea. You see, that's one of the ways they dehumanize. If you attack their idea, you're up for attack, violent attack, death, injury, right? Even though you're just challenging an idea. Society, we're supposed to be attacking ideas. We're supposed to be challenging ideas. If you want to live in a society, any free society that, I don't care what the society is. All society should be challenging ideas. And you shouldn't be calling for murder or violence against people who are challenging your ideas. Those people should be getting, honors for challenging ideas, Yeah, so a lot of people who are ideological have no guilt about violence that's perpetrated against people who are against their ideology, because in their minds, those people who were killed or injured or whatever, who are against their ideology are not human. They're the enemy. They deserve more than they got. And you see this. You say, well, I don't know if these are actors or not, but I mean, you see these massive crowds, when there's a guy that got shot there for, wearing the wrong kind of hat, and people were cheering it, dehumanizing. So they are so brainwashed, and the alarm bells should be going off when people are their values are that twisted. Now, tools used by manipulators include amplification, simplistic assumptions, conflating complex situations into oversimplified approximations. Like, this is very common. If it's a complex system, something that's very complex, many layers, very nuanced, they'll generalize it, black and white. It's this, it's that. You're wrong. I'm right. You're the enemy. You should be killed for questioning because what you're saying is going against my ideology. My professor told me so. They will also use negative stereotypes. Again, polarization, them and us, and of course, plenty of logical fallacies. The bedrock for most ideologies, religions, cults, is to defend their illogic with logical fallacies. The enemy will be painted as extreme and irredeemable, and therefore an extreme action is the only plausible route forward. We must generalize anybody who's against us as being for whoever the straw man that we create as the enemy, and then, therefore we must retaliate and we must kill them. We must drone strike them, right? That's these crazies are literally calling for. I saw on the news, this chick was calling for drone striking Trump supporters in the news. What the fuck? Yeah. So, passion and simple messages are the play of the day. Emotion, polarization. Polarization makes the gray and mundane, something complex into something simple and exciting, right? It's an easy tool for a manipulator to use, to dumb it down so the useful idiots can understand, the whatever the narrative is, so they can fight against it. Socialization and normalization of the narrative is also another tactic. It's the goal of manipulator is to make the narrative part of everyday conversations outside of the hardcore, offices of the crazed, ideologues who are pushing this stuff, right? The conversations generally should be contained before that happens, so dissenting voices could be kept at bay. But once they've created inoculation and thought stopping and these narratives that create inoculation and thought stopping as common and normalized, then they can push the agenda a little further forward. So the public, will be, well, that doesn't make sense. Okay, yeah, I was prepared by the thought stopping and inoculation that they told me beforehand. They framed it in such a way so that I can try to make sense of it. And the only way they can make sense of it, because it's complex and it's really complicated, is into the oversimplified narrative that they created before. They prepared me before for this. So it starts to sound crazy, but it's happening, right? So the goal is not to for the manipulator to not overplay the mistreatment to the point that people grow numb and immune, right? So they don't want the misjustices to be occurring too frequently all the time, because then people will be like, man, it just happened again, man, it happens. You know what I mean? So they want the outrage, right? You got to be outraged. And if it's just common occurrence, you're not going to be that outraged. So things start wearing out. So it might be some type of a racial injustice, or it might be some type of who knows what the next one will be, right? They'll be changing. They'll create a narrative, something that is wrong. Drinking out of this cup is wrong. If anybody ever drinks out of this cup is wrong. They're evil. Only evil people drink out of this cup. Look, that person drank out of the cup. Let's get them. They'll keep framing something. Well, hold on a second. Drinking out of that cup's not a bad thing. What are you even talking about, right? So I know I might be losing one of my two followers here with my metaphors, but so on a small level, so there's society level and there's smaller level. There's different types of manipulation that goes on. And so on smaller levels, of course, the target should be isolated as much as possible from external voices and external ideas that are outside of the narrative. But on a larger scale, on a society scale, the need to act, the war cry should be spelled out clearly to the targets. Action can be protests, looting, riots, terrorizing residential areas at nighttime, swarming the general public at restaurants or whenever they, or wherever they are, and get them to perform some form of solidarity with your movement. You know what I mean? So these actions, for and that's going to try to drum up a mass target, right? So they're not targeting individuals. Now they're targeting the mass, a group of people. So in that situation, they're trying to target a mass of people, unknowns. They don't know who they are. They don't care. They just want somebody to get pissed off enough to react in a certain way. But on the individual level, when you're creating a radical, the actions typically are incremental. You start, handing out flyers, and then you progress from there to them they come with you to hand out flyers, and they hand out flyers on their own, and then it progresses, ultimately to, potentially, having them plan assassination attempts, so like that's hardcore cult crazies, right? But I mean, they exist, and people are getting killed all the time, right? But manipulators may choose to act on a slow burn. They, slow and insidious, like black tar oozing over your skin. They like a long-term grift, like becoming, say, a professor. I mean, there are different tactics to get different results that you want. And money, of course, talks, and a lot of people need funding, and a lot of universities need funding, and a lot of professors would be more than happy to take your money, and push whatever ideology you want, right? So it's funny, though, how most of the ideologies are woke far left. It's not, you don't see too, or any in universities. I wonder why that is. You don't see any of the more conservative. Well, I guess in a way they're ultra conservative, these woke left bigots, right? Because they, well, we'll address that in another video, I guess. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to get things done, but I mean, money, paying professors, or I don't want to make accusations here, but people do fund universities, right? And you can see who funds these universities and what these universities' ideologies are, and they're indoctrinating cohorts, entire groups of students, who will become the next wave of news editors. I don't think news is going to last, so that's a waste of time, right? But they might become prime ministers or tech CEOs, all right, or forced government counselors, for the new wave of our gulags, where you're going to have to go and get your reprogramming, your brain washed. Or these people might end up starting, maybe a perpetuation where they start their own NGOs that apply pressure, 24/7, 365 days a year for whatever narrative that they want to push, for whatever goal. So if you look at the size of the plans that are enacted, according to Time Magazine, how they said there was a cabal of people who are conspiring, to affect, from hiring vast amount of people to work at the polls. What were these people doing at the polls that they were hired by this cabal? All right. Shouldn't everybody at the polls be doing the same thing? Well, right. So the size of these plans are pretty staggering. Long term, I mean, sorry, you think of decades, but some of these plans, obviously, plans are a year long, 2 years long. If you want to build a rocket, it's going to take you a couple of years. It's not going to be a 2-month thing. So, of course, humans make plans that last, that are 10 years long, 20 years long, right? We do this. That's what humans do. So why wouldn't ideological people make plans that, are years long? And again, that Time Magazine, man, I should do a video on that Time Magazine article. Manipulators will hold up others who have acted in the interest of their narrative as heroes. Their actions will be glorified. And anyone can be a hero like them if they just act and do what we, sort of imply that they should be doing. Right? This is powerful on people who are seeking meaning in their lives, who feel ignored and irrelevant. Make a difference, make your life count, give your life meaning, join my cause, right? That's what they'll tell you. I'm not literally saying this. I'm just saying, this is what the other people are saying. So someone might try to get dirt on you, and this is a common thing. I don't know. This is a tactic. I should say it's common. This is a potential tactic, getting dirt to blackmail a target early on, so that they will be scared to be smeared by this blackmail, it's a good way to once you have them, then you could build on that, and then they can start doing more and more things that you could blackmail them with, and dig them deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So that's somebody that isn't mentally ideological, but you're manipulating them to do something, even though they know it's not right or they disagree with it, but they're being forced to. So that's a different form of manipulation, which isn't really brainwashing. It's just manipulation. So inoculation and thought stopping is a great way to ward off, rational ideas from the outside group. So what is thought stopping? Thought stopping is used to stop the target from thinking things they shouldn't, stopping their thoughts, so they won't be dissuaded from the manipulator's narrative. So inoculation is used to stop. So there's thought stopping, which is the manipulator prepares the target to not question internally, not ask questions about the stuff, to be able to dismiss, when the ideas come up, to not allow those ideas to rise. Inoculation is preparing the target to be able to defend itself against questions from outside of the indoctrinated cult. So that's the difference between thought stopping and inoculation. So of course there's going to be people from the outside when the targets, the indoctrinated targets, are released to the wild, or going about their business in the real world. They will come across people who question them, and normal rational people are like, what the hell's that all about? What are you doing? Like, what's that? So the manipulators know this, of course, right? They're not fools. Well, they're not fools. They're scumbags, but they're not fools. So they know that this is going to happen. So they got to prepare their targets, their indoctrinated targets, for when this eventual day happens. And so how they do this is to prepare their indoctrinated targets with weaker versions of comments or questions or attacks that they should expect. And if they'll reframe a rational question as, this is coming from a dark place. This question, if they ask this question, then when you hear this question, this person's evil. This person is a whatever. Enter your current insult here, right? So your current enemy, your current straw man, right? If you ask this, if you hear this question, that person is the evil, the enemy. If you hear this question, that person, they'll just try to reframe it, right? And they'll use a lot of logical fallacies. So if beforehand, so that the indoctrinated person doesn't have time to think, to question, because they don't want you questioning. They just want you consuming. So they'll give you all the answers. So they'll set up something that's sort of like, and before you have a chance to think about it, they'll give you an answer, but the answer is wrong. The answer is a logical fallacy. The answer is reframing of the question to make it, come from a bad place or from whatever, and then they'll use more logical fallacies on why that question is wrong or whatever. And so they'll condition the targets to, generally, plug their ears and la, 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 I'm not listening to you kind of thing. Or they'll condition them to, have, to laugh off, or not laugh off, maybe practice laughing off the attacks when they see it. I know you're the evil. My manipulator told me about when these questions come that you're going to be the evil person asking me the question, right? But generally they'll be trained, maybe not, cognizant of it, but to attack the person and not the idea. And you'll see this all the time. The ad hominems, they always attack the person and not the idea. When somebody says, oh, that, calling you, somebody, whatever, instead of attacking the idea, they immediately, and this happens in politics all the time, I don't understand. They think people are that stupid. I don't think people are that stupid. There are people that are that stupid, but I don't think the majority of the people are that stupid. They see through it, right? So they always attack the person instead of the argument or, the whataboutisms. Again, more logical fallacies. And when you hear politicians talk, they're lying. They're going to be using logical fallacies. Not all of them. There's some that, especially in opposition, that are calling out stuff, right? So those are always good to hear. You need to hear the voices of opposition. It's critical. But so the tactic that, of course, this ultimate that the manipulator wants the indoctrinated target to do is to turn any debates into an argument, a name calling, ad hominems, So it just turns into a screaming match, and then names are called, and then people walk away, and there was no discussion about the point, no discussion about the subject, no discussion about the topic or the narrative. They want it to be turned to name calling and oversimplified generalizations and logical fallacies that are wrong as soon as possible. They don't want the question to be brought up. They don't want people, so, watch again, logical fallacies. It's critical, understanding logical fallacies. If you're the indoctrinated person, I mean, it's easy to see it when you're from the outside. You see this person, you're like, whoa, what the hell's that? Where's their head at, right? That's pretty screwy. And so you'll see it from the outside, but the person who's doing it, they don't see it, right? Because they've been conditioned and they believe their stuff. I mean, there's a good chance that they should feel, something's up, something's wrong. Whenever you're getting emotional about stuff, you just take a step back and, whoa, why am I getting so emotional? I shouldn't be. It's not natural to be emotional about stuff like this. Maybe I'm brainwashed. Maybe I've been indoctrinated into, some current thing, right? Maybe I should be looking at this. Who's pulling the strings? The guys with the money. Wow. So who would have thought the billionaires are manipulating all the students in the universities via their professors? Who would have thought that? I don't know. Yeah, that's it, I guess. So the strategy is to keep is for the target to anger anybody who's questioning their ideology, and to call names and ad hominems and try to not address the actual flaws of their narrative or the illogic, and to the point where some people have actually, there's articles even written about the problems with reason, the problems with logic. They're part of the white patriarchy. Ooh, so they're trying to brainwash these kids to be illogical, and these stupid morons are eating it up. Like, wow, really? Anyway, so the manipulators will tend to keep their useful idiots and their indoctrinated targets in line, to the point where they want the radicalized ones to be the next generation to teach and to re-indoctrinate, to grow the clan, right? To grow their numbers, to get more radicalized, brainwashed fools in their group, because the people in the core, the very core, they need the numbers of all their minions, of all their radicalized followers and indoctrinated followers and their useful idiots. As the gradient goes out, they need all them to surround them, so that's their buffer. And they need the people fighting each other, so that people aren't noticing what's going on at the very center, right? That's where the corruption and the power grabs and the whatever else is going on, right? So that's it for this one, episode 10. I think now maybe I'm going to upload these 10 episodes to podcast. I think I'm going to start a podcast. I don't know what I should call it yet, but I'm going to do that.